The second question goes to Pansy from South Africa. Both public and private sector contribute to the success of digital identity systems and across countries, but their roles also differ. Do you agree governance is a shared responsibility for digital ID? What appropriate policies and solutions, such as data governance frameworks, do you envisage for digital ID systems?
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Put the mic on.
Can you hear me? Yeah, this one works. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for the questions. I think the first thing that we have to do is to adopt a human rights approach. I think the right to privacy is central to the development of digital ID, the right to equality, to make sure that no one is left behind, and also we have to, most importantly, observe the right to human dignity, because our personal information is ours. They make us who we are, and no one has any right to do as they please with our personal information. We have to implement very robust cybersecurity measures, and we also have to make sure that we are transparent about the project, take people along, and these are principles that apply to both the private and public sector. But when it comes to the public sector, what is it that they have to do? I think they have, before they even do anything, they have to conduct a data processing impact assessment. I haven't heard that being talked about since I was here. And there has to be a very robust regulatory framework that will ensure the protection of personal information. Education is important, not only of the population, but of the public servants themselves, because data protection in our countries is very new, and I've realized that most public servants do not understand quite the principles of data protection. So we have to make sure that we equip them with the skills and take the public along, because what happens, the public will see that there's a new ID, digital ID, but there hasn't been any public awareness campaign about this. And of course, infrastructure is important. Without it, we cannot even begin to move, because IT systems without a digital ID without a requisite infrastructure will not work. The private sector, I think they have to apply privacy by design. There were many private sector organizations here that spoke. I never heard for once the word privacy by design, and that is very important to ensure the protection of all data, and to ensure that all the principles of data protection are observed. Security of the data is very important. We cannot, as data protection authorities, emphasize this more, because if you do not have adequate security measures in place, both technical and organizational, you become our victim. And we'll come and investigate you, and some of us, we impose very heavy fines, and this is not a threat, it's a reality. And also ensure that they must employ technology enhancing, privacy enhancing technologies.
Thank you.
I think I'll take it up to here because my time is up.
Nigeria, Vincent, if your country were to adopt digital identity solutions, which model would you go for? Centralized, federated, or decentralized, but linked with civil registry systems, for example?
Thank you very much. I would also like to thank the management of ID for Africa for inviting us as a country to be part of this wonderful panel. And from what we'll be hearing in the last 2 days, it's obvious that there's no way you can really practice or deploy digital identity without taking the issues around data privacy seriously. Now, coming to the question about if my country was to adopt a model, our question in Nigeria is no more about if, the fact that we have actually adopted a model, which is the centralized model. And with the Nigerian government prepared for this as far back as 2007, when the NIMC Act was passed, establishing IMSI, that's the Identity Management Commission, to provide legal identity for all citizens and legal residents in Nigeria. The Act actually empowers NIMSI to oversee or to manage identity for all Nigerians and legal residents. Now, a lot of things that people are really afraid of is the cost, which may be very huge. More importantly, for a large population like Nigeria, looking at a population of about 230 million people, the landmass, which is very huge, the local governments. But one good thing that the Nigerian government has done is to actually develop NIMSI to the extent that they can deliver on this mandate of providing centralized ID system for the country. Presently they have offices in all 774 local governments in Nigeria, and they have points of enrollment, about 1,200, and in foreign countries they have about 200. Now, a major issue that people may be scared of is this single point of failure and the vulnerability to attack, since it's one centralized database. But I think what we have done in Nigeria is to ensure that we provide enough technical and organizational measures, which Percy has spoken about, to ensure and to guarantee the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of that such data, and even the resilience of such data in a way that it will create confidence in the mind of our citizens. And to a large extent, I think that has happened in Nigeria, to the extent that now over 120 million people are already registered. In Nigeria, that is over almost half of the population of the country. And an average Nigerian of that transitional age now has a digital ID, because you use it for school registration, for financial inclusion, humanitarian services, and so many other things. So it's like the foundational ID on which other functional ID are now built on. You talk of road safety for driver's license. You talk of the immigrations for passport and so on. So all these things are already in place in Nigeria. All the government has done is to deploy infrastructure, set up offices for them, engage staff. They have over 2,000 staff all over the country. These are things that might have been a major challenge ideally, but to a large extent, I think we have addressed this in Nigeria. And the central database, which is really working in Nigeria, to a large extent, is very easy to manage now, and I think we are making progress with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Kenya, Immaculate. There is a need for interoperability of secure and trusted DI systems across borders. That is, international collaboration and the development, adoption, alignment, or mapping of the use of technical standards to ensure all users are able to access essential services. Do you agree, Immaculate, that this is essential?
Thank you, Disha, and thank you to ID4Africa for taking the issue around data protection very critically. I want to say matters around interoperability is the centerpiece on data flows. So it's critical because it helps us realize efficiency, because it means that our data sets are speaking to each other across the African continent. I believe it's one of the areas that potentially will unlock the African 1 billion market. It will resolve the issues around AFTCA in terms of trade. But as I agree, why do we agree to this point? One is the security. When data becomes interoperable, it means that we reduce identity theft, we reduce fraud, and also therefore the quality of data improves. The other thing is about convenience and inclusivity. We minimize physical presence because the data is moving from one jurisdiction to the other. So you don't have to be there present. If you are in Nigeria, you can get the data in Kenya or in South Africa. So that also, and you see people who ordinarily will not access that data, they are able to access. The other one, of course, it improves in terms of efficiency and accessibility. We now move from just we now move to efficiency and also having what you normally call once only principle. That helps in terms of data. Of course, there's the issue around digital trust. We've had many investors say that digital trust is critical when it comes to matters around digital trade. And finally, of course, we increase data portability. And this is important because then we enhance vendor neutrality, and we also reduce locking systems. So I agree that that will, in a big way, unlock the potential for Africa. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Immaculate. Ethiopia, Baucho, what is the value of having trust services such as electronic signatures, timestamps, seals, to support the usability of DI solutions, including across borders, based on technical standards, let's say recognized technical standards, and good regulatory frameworks, such as international agreements? Baucho.
Thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, everyone. Having a trust service has a multi-layered benefits or value. One is, it is legal recognition and interoperability across borders. International regulatory frameworks, usually and bilateral agreements define and recognize the trust service legally. And the other is, it ensures cross-border trust and legal validity, critical for cross-border contracts, e-government services, and international financial transactions. The other benefit is it will give us an enhanced security and integrity. Trust services are grounded in technical standards, like standards from ETSI, IETF, or ISO, that ensure data authenticity. That means documents have not been altered, and it will give non-repudiation. That means signers cannot deny having signed that specific document. And the other is, it will give us a time validity, proves that the document existed at a certain point. So timestamps ensure that digital identity-related data is chronologically anchored and tamper resistance. The third benefit is, usability and trust in the DI systems. Users and entities, are more willing to use DI systems when data integrity and the legal enforceability is grounded. The fourth is, it facilitates, compliance and management. Use of standard trust services helps organizations comply with data protection laws, audit and accountability requirements, and anti-fraud and cybersecurity frameworks. So these are, some of the benefits we have just, by implementing these trusted services. Thank you.
Thank you, Bauchel. I go back to Ivory Coast. So, question 2, how can African countries protect their control over data, that is data sovereignty, whilst enabling cross-border digital services?
Alors, souveraineté numérique et transfert de données, commerce électronique semblent être très opposés, parce que la souveraineté, c'est être maître chez soi. Le transfert des données, c'est envoyer les informations hors de son pays. Mais il y a un pont. Et le pont, c'est la construction d'un marché, un marché unique. Donc il faut qu'il y ait une certaine harmonisation de nos différentes législations, et ce qui permettra de construire ce pont. Et lorsqu'on a ce pont, il faut bien entendu que certains organes soient mis en place. On peut penser par exemple à un organe panafricain de protection des données personnelles qui pourra superviser un tant soit peu tout ce qui se passe dans ce marché commun. On peut aussi penser à tout ce qu'il y a comme accord, surtout les accords entre les différentes autorités et les différents pays, afin de favoriser cette confiance-là. Parce que quand les données partent dans un autre pays et qu'on n'a pas la confiance que l'autorité qui est dans son pays est capable de protéger ses données comme nous-mêmes, il y a ce souci-là qui fait que très souvent les autorités sont très réticentes à accepter que les données aillent par ailleurs. Les accords multilatéraux aussi, tout ce qui est multilatéral peut permettre d'avancer. Donc dans le cadre de l'organisation des autorités de protection africaines, on peut imaginer ces genres de scénarios qui nous permettront de pouvoir suppléer là où il y a ce qu'on appelle le hard law. Il faut qu'on pense plus ou moins à tout ce qu'il y a comme soft law qui peuvent nous permettre de pouvoir avancer sur ces éléments-là. Voici ma proposition.
Oui, merci Sylvain. Je pense que cet équilibre entre la souveraineté numérique et le transfert des données est quand même un équilibre assez sensible, qu'on n'est pas encore arrivé à ce stade, à ce niveau de protéger efficacement nos données, mais c'est bien sûr l'ambition de l'Afrique de pouvoir le faire. I will now go to South Africa. The second question is, what can be done to strengthen the ability of data regulators to manage digital ID risks?
Thank you very much for the question. I think the government should adopt robust regulatory frameworks for data protection, and the framework should establish data protection regulatory authorities with robust enforcement powers, because without enforcement powers, they will not be able to provide redress to victims. And the framework, what is also important is that it should protect the independence of that regulatory authority to ensure that it performs its duties and exercise its powers without fear, favor, or prejudice. And I think it's important also to ensure that the authority has sufficient funding, because what happens out there is that regulatory authorities are established, but they are not provided with sufficient funding, and the funding should enable the authority to train its staff, to equip them with skills in the rapidly advancing technological environment we are operating in. And the authority should be able to conduct assessments and investigations on its own initiative without waiting for a complaint to be submitted, so that there is then compliance, to ensure that there's compliance with, that the digital ID system complies with data protection regulatory framework. And of course, cooperation is important at regional level and at international level as well, to ensure that we share best practice and to ensure that we benefit from peer learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Pansy. I think one of the most important questions is actually the independence of data protection authorities to effectively enforce data protection laws. I will go to Nigeria. Second question: how important is international development cooperation for supporting the governance and funding of digital ID systems in low and middle income countries?
Thank you. I think with the increasing digitalization globally, it is really important that the issues around digital ID are equally addressed, but that's the only way you can actually play effectively in the digital global economy. And I see it as a two-way thing. The countries themselves must be ready and willing to adopt digital ID, and for them to be able to work with development partners. It's one thing for development partners to be willing to offer support. It's a completely different thing for your government not to be willing to support. In some cases, you may even ask for counterpart funding, for government to produce, to make provision for part of the funding, while your own government to now, while their own, will not get support through their own efforts. Our experience in Nigeria has been efforts from both sides. You have the government, as I said before, that with NIPSI already in place, but already commenced work on providing legal identity for Nigerians. Now coming to the issue of digital identity, the World Bank, EIB, and EFG, they've actually supported Nigeria in so many ways. And Their target is to increase digital ID registration enrollment to about 148 million. Before they came, Nigeria was already doing 80 million because of what the government had put in place. But with the coming of development partners, this has increased to about 120, and the target is to actually have about 148. In the area of support, I think it's really important to look at the regulatory frameworks around digital ID and data protection. For instance, in Nigeria, the data protection law was a conditional precedent to funding some of these digital ID initiatives in Nigeria. Because that was the first thing that they actually requested for that. You must have a data protection law and an independent data protection authority before you can unlock funding for you. And to a large extent, we enjoy tremendous support from the project office in Nigeria in terms of the passage of the bill itself, in terms of support to the office, setting up the office, human power, recruitment, infrastructure, and so on. To a large extent, they've supported us at the Data Protection Commission Nigeria. For the Identity Management Commission, the act, the original was passed in 2007. Now, just this week, the amended act has been passed to cater for issues around digital ID, which is what we are now talking about. And also in the area of infrastructure, they've actually supported NIMSI in the area of infrastructure, and in building human capital too. Their staff, what categories of staff, what capabilities do they have? So human capital development is really key in digital ID, and they are doing this. In the area of awareness, that's another area. They are coming in strongly. We were discussing with somebody yesterday here, he was at the airport in Nigeria. He saw billboards everywhere talking about the need for protecting data and privacy of us in Nigeria. These are all things that we did through this, the support from the development partners. And the same thing is happening with NIMSI. Now coming to the area of experience sharing, knowledge sharing. Having worked in different countries across the globe, they are coming with experiences from different backgrounds, different cultures, different level of technological advancement, which they will bring to bear in your country. In Nigeria, when we started with the data protection law, we had consultants from the World Bank that worked with us, but we insisted that we must have our own local consultant because of our own peculiarities, our culture, our people, level of technological advancement. This is a fusion of both to a large extent that has brought us to where we are today. And in Nigeria, I'm sure with the work they are doing with the NIMSI, very soon we are going to hit that target of 148 million. I even surpass it because a lot is happening in the area of robust infrastructural development, human capital development, the laws, legal frameworks that are coming that are really important to ensure that that data in the database is secure, is safe, and is processed within the provisions of the laws in data privacy and in the digital identity ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. So the change in the mindset of our populations, our governments, and towards international cooperation is also very important. So Kenya, second question. AI-powered digital ID systems is the new trend. Do you agree that this may also accelerate data risks and weaken governance or improve efficiency of services? How to balance those competing concerns, especially in the lack of appropriate AI regulatory frameworks?
I feel
sorry,
like...
Can I just add one more question to it? Okay. What ethical issues should be addressed when using AI in digital ID systems? The floor is yours, Immaculate.
Oh, okay. I think I feel that is a trick question. The one they put when you're cross-examining a witness, so that if they say yes, you're in trouble. Just going back to AI, I think it's inevitable we have to embrace AI. And AI in the ID system, if we are caught up in a situation of what I could describe like what happened to Kodak many years ago when companies were speaking, they had a R&D research and development department, and they didn't see what hit them when overnight everyone moved to digital, and they were trying to play catch up, and that was it. They were still having a stock of Polaroid, whatever photos. I think we're in that state in history. So I think when it comes to AI, and when it comes to AI and digital ID, one, we must accept improvement of services and efficiency. However, we must also note that the issues around accelerating data risks and weak governance. But having said that, What then can we do to balance so that we are addressing these concerns? One, when it comes to, it's putting, and Pansy didn't talk about it, putting human rights at the center of digital ID so that it becomes data privacy at the core of any design system, so that it becomes a data protection by default and by design. Two, the other thing we can do is having a regulatory framework, policies that, because that way it provides certainty, provides trust. We are able to say what we need to do in the security, mitigation of abuse or unauthorized surveillance. The third issue is independent monitoring. And you did talk about having data protection authorities or any other to actually monitor and make sure that there is some level of somebody who is able to ring the bell when there is no transparency. The fourth issue is incorporating accountability and transparency when it comes to matters of AI and digital ID. And of course, we can't say, one of the other things of addressing governance, we can't say one size fits all. No. We really must begin to contextualize when it comes to AI. Let's make it regional, specific, so that it's addressing concerns in a specific region. The second question on issues around ethical issues that should be addressed by the AI digital system. Some of the ethical issues is, of course, one of the concerns is data protection and the illusion of privacy. Because of how much data is mined when it comes to issues around around AI. But what can we do? Because like we say from how we approach data protection is always to come up with a mitigating strategy. Is to, one, implement data protection principles. Yeah. Data minimization, purpose limitation, and so on and so forth. The other ethical dilemma would be the issue around algorithm bias. Because we know, we often say garbage in, garbage out. It means that as people are working on the algorithms, there's a likelihood of when you are making automated decision making, there could be some bias. The solution is to make sure that as we develop this AI solution, we ensure that equity and inclusivity are there by design. And then the other one is discrimination. That is another possible issue. Under that, the solution is to design algorithms that are sensitive to gender, ethnicity, and so on and so forth, so that we also have traceability, ethical audit. And then finally, the other issue is the issue around we call it a black box. Yeah. So what do we do about it? It's basically to uphold the principles of transparency and accountability when it comes to AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Immaculate. We need to defeat opacity, opaqueness, whatever the word, in AI systems. Ethiopia, Balcho, how can authorities educate and involve the public on digital ID and data protection? Not only data protection authorities, but all authorities have this mandate to protect data indirectly. So the question is, how do we educate and how do we involve the public?
Thank you once again. Educating and engaging the public on digital ID and data protection is very essential to build trust, encourage adoption, and ensure informed participation in digital ecosystem. So authorities can achieve this through a strategic mix of education, engagement, transparency, and support. To mention some of the hows, we should have a clear, accessible public education campaigns. These awareness campaigns can be done through print medias, electronic medias, including the social media like YouTube's, and also tailor message to different age groups, literacy levels, and cultural contexts. And also our educational content should be developed in a plain language, like infographics and videos on what a digital ID is, how to use it safely, what data is collected and why, and how data is protected. And the other is, community-based outreach and inclusion. We have to engage ourselves, in public workshops and road shows. And sometimes you have to focus on localized engagements, like translating materials into multiple languages and use and provide support for underserved groups, including seniors, rural residents, and persons with disabilities. The other is, we should have, a transparent communication on data protection. We have to publish data flow diagrams and privacy notices that explain, what information is stored, who can access it, how long it is kept, and how it's protected, like, the use of encryption and also the limited access security features. We should also promote, individual rights, educate citizens on rights under data protection laws. Example, access, correction, erasure, consent. If really people are well aware of this, they will have a trust, in using these DI systems, and provide clear paths for complaints and redress. The other is, to have, to build trust through independent oversight and audits. We should appoint, a data protection authority, highlight the role of independent DPAs who monitor, audit, and enforce data protection, publish annual transparency records, and secure audits. And we have to make sure that, their individual right is really under the oversight of a trusted and independent authority. So this could really build, a trust of our community in using the DI systems.
Thank you, Bachel. So digital literacy and data literacy as part of our educational systems is also very important, because everything goes through schools and curriculums. Thank you. So I will now go to Ivory Coast. The last question for you. What legal updates are needed to keep digital ID laws relevant in a fast-changing tech landscape?
Je pense qu'on ne doit plus être en retard. Je sais qu'il y a très longtemps, j'ai entendu parler de l'intelligence artificielle, et je vois que les premières lois sur l'intelligence artificielle en Afrique se font rares, alors qu'il y a longtemps qu'on a entendu parler de l'intelligence artificielle. Il faut que nos lois commencent à anticiper et à suivre tout ce qu'on peut appeler aujourd'hui comme technologie émergente, les nouvelles technologies. Il y en a beaucoup maintenant. C'est vrai que l'IA, on peut dire c'est le passé, mais il y en a beaucoup. La technologie quantique, tous ces éléments, on entend parler aujourd'hui, mais c'est le moment de pouvoir réglementer. Il faut aussi qu'on change notre façon de prendre les lois. Qu'on change notre façon de prendre les lois, parce qu'il faut impliquer les professionnels. Il faut impliquer ceux dont c'est le métier, de telle sorte que nous puissions prendre en compte pratiquement toutes les préoccupations et que nous ayons des lois qui sont adaptées et non pas des lois qui sont en déphasage avec la réalité. L'autre élément à prendre en compte, je le disais tout à l'heure, il faut qu'on commence à s'orienter beaucoup plus sur la soft law. Peut-être que cette soft law, elle n'est pas contraignante, mais elle a un volet éducatif. Et elle permet de mettre en place un certain nombre de comportements qui régulent pratiquement tout ce qui se passe en dehors même de l'action du régulateur. Donc pour moi, je pense qu'il faut changer notre façon de voir les choses, et il faut aussi renforcer les pouvoirs des autorités. Les autorités de protection des données dans chaque pays doivent avoir le pouvoir renforcé, des sanctions dissuasives, des aspects financiers doivent être pris en compte, peut-être même une fiscalité, pour pouvoir permettre à ces autorités-là d'avoir des moyens pour pouvoir faire face à tout ce qui vient. Parce que tout à l'heure, la présidente du Kenya le disait, avec l'intelligence artificielle, c'est quelque chose de phénoménal, mais il y a beaucoup de dangers. Et pour ces dangers-là, il faut beaucoup de moyens techniques, de compétences techniques pour pouvoir faire face.
So Agile regulation is the new trendsetter. I move to South Africa. What rights should individuals have over their digital ID data, and how can they be enforced?
I think the rights of data subjects should be at the center of the establishment of a digital ID, and the data subjects should have the right to correct their information, to ensure that their information in the digital ID is accurate, and they should have the right to update that personal information. Incorrect personal information can lead to distress. If I can just give an example, I started my career at some point running elections, and a young woman came to the voting station to vote, and in the voters list, she was indicated as deceased. And you know, we couldn't allow her to vote because in the population register, which matches the voters list, she was dead. So that's the problem, and she was very distressed that she was dead walking. You know, what is it? Dead walking. So the right also to ensure that personal information that is collected is used only for the purpose for which it was collected, which is for the purpose of establishing a digital ID, and not for any other purpose. I'm sure if I can just ask you as you are sitting here, how many of us have received spam calls because our data is used for other purposes, for unsolicited direct marketing? So that's because people collect our data and use it for other purposes, and actually even sell it. And also the data subjects should have the right to submit a complaint to the regulatory authority where their personal information has been abused, and also a right to a physical document. We are talking here about digital ID, but people should have a choice. For those who want a physical document, they should be allowed to own it. Thank you very much.
I perfectly agree that DI should be voluntary and not mandatory. So the next question goes to Nigeria. How can tokenization and all the privacy by design principles, such as cryptographic methods, homomorphic encryption, what we call privacy by design, how can they help reduce data collection and promote data minimization in digital ID systems without losing functionality?
I think the major reason behind tokenization is to reduce data collection and processing. At least you have access to the specific data that you need for that purpose. And to a large extent, it's a way of meeting two major principles of data protection in terms of data minimization and purpose limitation. When you talk of privacy enhancing technologies, this is a major tool, the digital ID system, and it can enhance sectoral approach in terms of data collection and data processing. For instance, looking at health sector, what you need for the services you want to offer in the health sector is what you have access to or what you can collect. If it's education, the same thing, you don't have access to any other information apart from the one you want to use, because it's a way of replacing sensitive information or your information with a token that anybody cannot just have access and be able to use it. And in a centralized ID system like we have in Nigeria, where you have to collaborate with a lot of organizations, the whole database is the foundation ID, where you have to interoperate with others with functional ID, for instance, customs, immigration, and so on. By the time I want to have access to your database, the only thing they have access to is the data that is relevant to them. So I think it's really important, and it's part of which we encourage. You mentioned privacy by design. Right from the moment you are deploying your solution, that will be part of what you want to put in place to ensure that you receive data. And in terms of security too, it creates a kind of comfort for data subjects or for citizens of a country that, yes, I have so much amount of data with this in your database, but it depends on the service that I want to enjoy. It depends on the kind of service they want to offer to me. You don't have access to any other information about me. So it's a bit of giving confidence, trust in your database, and to a large extent, when you are talking of digital technologies or digital ID system, is something that we have to take seriously and encourage data controllers and processors to put in place as part of their privacy enhancing technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenya, how can digital IDs be used in emergencies without risking data misuse?
Thank you for the question. It's an interesting question because as a data protection authority in Kenya, we often get requests from telecos and emergency institutions where they are saying, can you authorize us to share information? So it's not far from actually what happens very often. But then what can we do to make sure we minimize misuse? One of the things is purpose limitation and data minimization. Those are two principles that we can embrace so that we limit the sharing of personal data to the absolute necessary and minimum. The other one is, of course, with the need to incorporate appropriate technical safeguard. When we do that, then we have security and control system to prevent theft or unauthorized use of data. The other one is relying on appropriate lawful basis for processing. And often we say, what is your lawful basis? Because an emergency is for public interest. And that is something you can rely on. And then, of course, mutual recognition of ID across borders. When we link ID system in domestic and across border framework, then it would also help in terms of when you're addressing issues around emergency and you avoid misuse of data. Thank you.
Thank you, Immaculate. I think national security should not be a trump card to do everything in emergency situations, especially necessity and proportionality principles should be respected. Ethiopia, what steps can build public trust in digital IDs, especially among vulnerable communities like in Africa?
Thank you so much. Building public trust in digital IDs, especially among vulnerable communities, requires a thoughtful and inclusive and rights-based approach. Vulnerable groups such as low-income populations, older adults, migrants, rural residents, and persons with disabilities may face a unique barrier to adoption. Trust must be created through fair design, transparency, as well as education and accountability. To mention some, we have to be, designed for inclusion from the very start, like, co-design with communities, involve, vulnerable groups in the design and the testing of DI systems to ensure that they meet real needs and don't unintentionally being left out. Use human-centered designs to focus on accessibility, ease of use, and simplicity. The other is, we have to make sure that, we are supporting them, in providing services like using offline and low-tech options. Provide alternative models of access, for example, physical cards, SMS-based IDs for people without smartphones or internet access. Ensure ID systems work offline in low bandwidth with environments. The other is, we have to make sure that ensure accessibility and usability. So our platforms has to be accessible. Design interfaces to comply with universal design and accessibility standards shall be used. We have to offer services, like voice assistance, large texts, and simple navigation. This will especially address, the needs of visually impaired people or people who have lost, their hearing capability. And at the same time, we have to use, human support channels, set up helplines, community agents and in-person help desks to assist those who aren't digitally literate. Train trusted intermediaries like social workers, local leaders to help people understand and use digital IDs safely. The last one I can say is, we have to demonstrate, real everyday benefits, to these parts or groups of society. We have to show the value of using DI solutions. Highlight how DI can simply access to social services like healthcare, education and employment opportunities. And then the last one is, legal protection and the rights awareness. Protect against discrimination and misuse. We have to enact laws that ban discriminatory use of DI and protect against surveillance or exclusion. We have to publicly commit that no one will be denied rights or services to not having the digital ID. And at the same time, we have to educate them on their rights. We have to educate public on the rights and the protections, including the right to access the correct access and correct their data, the right to refuse biometric capture, and the right to appeal if denied.
Okay, thank you so much, Balcho. I think one of the key takeaways from this question is that without trustworthy critical infrastructure, there can be no public trust, if I can resume it in one sentence. Now, one sentence from each of you. How do you actually, reconcile trustworthy digital identity systems and data protection? Can I start with Immaculate?
I was hoping I was going to be the last. I think the trustworthy digital identity and data protection, but I would say one is on one side, the other one is on the other side of the coin.
You can rephrase the question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think it's not possible to have a trustworthy digital ID without data protection.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. That's the straight answer.
Yeah.
If they need each other, you need it, because data privacy then respects me as a human being and gives me my human dignity. First, I'm a human, then I get an ID.
Absolutely. I agree. The question was meant and put that way because we use that word trustworthy every time. And we say everything is trustworthy without actually giving due consideration to data protection principles. And we believe trustworthiness can exist independently of data protection principles, and that not is the case. So I will go to Pansy, and the same question for you, Pansy. How do you reconcile these two, I will not say competing interests, but complementary interests?
I think what you need to do is to put human rights at the center of the development of digital ID, because you don't just have to look at data protection. Data protection talks to privacy, but incorporate other rights, equality, human dignity. That's how to do it.
The human-centric approach
Yes.
is very important. So I will go to Vincent.
It's very difficult to separate both. The most important thing is for them to be able to work together to create that trust in your citizens. And we need to really drop the human angle and find a way for the data protection authorities to work with the identity management authorities in countries. In a lot of countries,
Yes.
there is rivalry that here, this is my mandate, you cannot come and dictate to me on what to do. I know what to put in place. Whereas most of them don't understand privacy. What they understand is data security. And data security is quite different from privacy. Our approach in Nigeria is for us to collaborate, to look at what they are doing in their data management office, and letting them know what data privacy is all about. And to a large extent, we've enjoyed tremendous cooperation with them. What are the things they need to put in place in terms of data privacy and protection? And I think that's the approach that we can give, and for citizens to have trust. However, if your romance, let me put it that way, is in a way that the identity management organization is doing what is not right, and we're still supporting them, citizens will be suspicious of what you are doing. But let them do the right thing, you work with them, and I think that's the best way to create confidence and trust in the mind of our citizens.
Thank you, Vincent. Again, citizen-centric approach. Barto.
In short and simple words, what I can say is this digital identity and the data protection cannot exist independently. What I can say is they are just the other side of the same coin. So there has to be the interwoven and a collaboration and a cooperative approach between the data protection and the digital identity so that the digital ecosystem really utilized in a best way that serves the people of the world.
Thank you. Sylvia, Ivory Coast.
Okay, merci. La protection des données à caractère personnel ne doit pas être un frein à l'innovation. Et nous, en Côte d'Ivoire, on pense que la protection des données à caractère personnel est la base même de l'identité numérique. Et nous devons accompagner et nous accompagnerons la mise en place de l'identité numérique.
Merci beaucoup. And before I end this session, I have an announcement to make. So please stay with me on that, just some seconds. Tomorrow, we have a roundtable for data protection authorities organized by World Privacy Forum, Pam Dixon. And we are all participating as data protection authorities in the 2 sessions. And one is also going to be dedicated to data protection impact assessments. And all those government entities who find it fearful to implement data protection impact assessments, you are invited to the roundtables tomorrow. I will also be personally intervening, and it's from 8:30 to 2 p.m., including lunch after and a tea break in between. So it's in Ballroom C, and I wish to see you tomorrow for these 2 sessions. Thank you very much for your kind attention.